Welcome to Empowering the Working Mom podcast, the place where working moms find inspiration, support, and practical advice to thrive in their professional and personal lives while aligning it all with God. I'm your host, Latika Vines, a fellow working mom on a mission to empower you to embrace your God-given strength and resilience of balancing work and life while leading you to align it all with God. Twice monthly, we'll delve into topics that matter to you, from time management, advancing your career, mental health, your relationship with God, and so much more. Get ready for insightful interviews with inspiring working moms, experts, and thought leaders who'll share their wisdom, their experiences, their prayers, and their Tabitha moments. Because together, we can break down barriers, defy stereotypes, and rewrite the narrative of being a working mom. So get ready for your empowering moment. Welcome to the Empowering Working Mom podcast. Hey, working mom. I hope you are doing well. Thank you so much for joining us for Empowering the Working Mom podcast. I am your host, Latika Vines, and I am so excited to come to you this week to give you an empowering moment to help you take the initiative in aligning your work-life balance and your career vision with God. This season, we're diving into a topic that every single working mom needs more of, but rarely prioritizes, and that is rest. Now, to help us unpack this very essential topic, I'm joined by our guest, Charlotte, who is passionate about helping working moms like you build mental muscles of resilience. But before we introduce our guest, if this topic resonates with you, share with the first working mom who comes to your mind. And don't forget to check out the show notes with all the important updates within our community. Now, are you excited about our guest today? Because I know I am. I have had the pleasure of meeting Charlotte and talking with her, and I'm just so blessed to have her with us today. She is a well-being coach, and she helps working moms like you ride the wave of life with calm. So essential. Not only with calmness, but peace and confidence so that you can have the career that you've worked hard for and also be the mom that you long to be. Now, as a qualified coach and mother of two, she has spent close to 10 years researching and building her own resilience so that she can be focused, present, and productive, both in her work with her clients and in her role as a mother to her children. She now teaches others to do this so they can find joy and peace in this season, while also modeling to their children the capacity to succeed and enjoy their lives to the full. That is so important and it's so essential for this time that we have been called to rest. I am so excited to have Charlotte with us today. Welcome, Charlotte, to Empowering the Working Mom podcast. We're so happy to have you here. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I live in Cape Town in South Africa, and I always love these conversations because I think it is amazing that we can come together from around the world, um, and talk about these things and realize that we are all humans, we are all struggling with the same things, we are all longing for the same things, and that's something that has been really interesting in my work as I've gone through my life. But so yeah, I'm in Cape Town. I am married with two small children. My son is 6 and my daughter is 4, and my passion from a young age, from as far as I can remember, and all the stories that I've been told, my passion has been about getting to know people and engaging with people and loving people and talking to people and just really wanting to I'm completely energized by people, and I'm energized by supporting and helping where I can. And I think that's what, as coaches, that's what we do. And I ended up being a coach actually because I was born in Zimbabwe and I did my master's in social development in the UK. And I went back to Zimbabwe to build preschools for orphaned and vulnerable children. I set up a project there. And whilst that was just really a vocation, I also needed to make some money to survive. So I qualified as a personal trainer. And I worked with clients on building their physical muscles. And in that time, I just really got to see how people need a space to talk, need a space to share, need someone just to hear them. And that is what I have now given my life to doing, is to really taking time to hear people, whether it's my friends or my children or my clients or myself, taking the time to really listen and hear what we're trying to say and what we need, and just to unpack things and get to know ourselves and to live a life that is full of life, not a life that is full of all the stuff. And yeah, so that's where I am today.
That's so amazing. That is so, so, so amazing. And it definitely I think that's why you and I gelled so much because, you get energy off of folks and I get energy off of folks, and then it just makes us just yeah, there are no words.
We don't need words, we've just got that energy.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. So, with that, most of us who are extroverts, we gain our energy from other people and that keeps us going, right? Um, but we know that not everybody is like that. We know that we have those of us who are introverts who are very stressed out, with all the energy. I have 2 kids who are extroverts and 2 kids that are introverts. So I see it every single day in every single circumstance that you could think of. But, with all of us, whether you're an extrovert, whether you're an introvert, no matter what work setting you're in, we we have a level of stress. We have a level of stress. But could you define for us what stress is if and how so stress interferes with rest?
Yes. So stress, my definition of stress is something that is happening within us, something that is happening inside us, actually, in response to a challenge that is happening to us. So something that is happening outside of ourselves. And because we are all different, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or um, whatever, whoever you are, we all experience stress in inverted commas in a different in response to different circumstances. So, so often you might look at someone else and they seem to not be getting stressed. And you're like, how can you not be finding this unbelievably stressful? Because something is happening inside you in response to this thing that's happening outside of you. And that same thing is not happening to that other person. And it is basically because what you or I are seeing in that circumstance is a threat. And so we're going into that stress response. We're going into fight or flight. So you are going, if we go back to that example where you are stressed about something and someone else isn't, you are seeing that challenge or that circumstance as a threat, whether that threat be to your physical needs or whether that threat be to your need for love and belonging. And I think that that's the thing that happens for us as working mums. Our physical needs are met. We have clothing, we have food, we have drink, we have security in terms of perhaps employment, a roof over our heads. But where we are desperately trying to meet our needs is in this need for love and belonging. And So when we see that being threatened, we have this physiological response which causes us to fight it or to flee or to simply freeze. We end up um, standing, if you will, seeing a tiger and either running full guns blazing at the tiger, climbing up the nearest tree, or just standing stock still and unable to respond. And the tigers of our lives these days are social media or um, a boss who has expectations of you, or this longing to be good, a good mum, and then you forget the ballet kit and you get to school and everyone else is in their ballet kit and you've forgotten. And what does that mean about me? What does that mean about my uh, capacity to belong, to be loved, to be accepted? And so we go into fight or flight. We are living in fight or flight all the time. And so, how can one rest in that place when we are constantly feeling the need to respond to the things happening outside of ourselves, out of this physiological chaos, if you will? So that is where I see stress having a huge impact on our capacity, on our ability to rest, and on our energy levels, on our ability to even be present, to be productive, to find joy in the day-to-day life. We're just exhausted.
That is so good. That is so good. I love your analogy of the tiger because so many of us can relate to that. There's so many things and even with leaving the ballet, bag at home, and you get to you get to the studio and it's like, uh, and all of those internal feelings, that I know so many can relate to because we've all been there. We've all been there, and then you start second guessing yourself and so your mind is now going, and you're not able to be calm. You're not able to be peaceful, and then now you're reacting to everything, rather than responding. So I love that you mentioned that. And with, us not being able to be in that restful setting, we don't have peace, we're not calm. We are literally like out of control, right? We're out of control. We're in this, out of body experience because we're not in that restful state. So when we're not in that restful state, who are we able to control?
So, first of all, I want to just touch on the reason we're not in control is because um, when we are in fight or flight, physiologically, there is a kind of short circuit between our, our um, our brains and our prefrontal cortex, which is part of our brains. But when we are in fight or flight, we're in survival mode, and we basically become a toddler. We lose the executive functioning part of our brain. And if you think about how, your child, when they're not getting their way, lies on the floor and throws a tantrum, we, to some extent, they don't have a prefrontal cortex. It hasn't developed yet. And so in a way, we become children. We are literally there for survival. We cannot think logically. We cannot be decisive. We cannot be creative. We are absolutely, uh, yeah, we've become children. And in that state, if you think about how that influences the people around you. You shout at your child. I mean, a lot of the mums that I speak to, and I imagine that those listening here, one of the biggest issues we have is that we don't have enough time. And I do not believe it's a time issue. I believe that it is our inability to manage ourselves that is the issue. Because when you shout at your child, now you have to spend 30 minutes repairing the relationship because your your shouting caused your child to be so upset. Now you're feeling guilty. Now you have to sit on the floor with them. And then you've also been so frustrated you spilt the milk. Now you have to spend 5 minutes cleaning up the milk. And then you couldn't remember things because you were so all over the place. And so it's not a time issue. It's an inability to, it's that our mental muscles are not strong enough to actually hold ourselves together. And so, in answer to your question, if you see how we influence the people around us, the situations around us, the way that our lives go, we only have the capacity, we can't control. What we're trying to do is control everybody. Oh, if I make sure that they get in the car on time, then I'll be able to get to where I need to get to on time. And if they do this, and if that happens, and actually, we're by trying to control everything, everything's going pear-shaped. And so when we turn things back and we say, the only person I can control is myself, when I am in control of myself, I can then have a different influence on what's going on around me. So you think about a morning getting ready for school, and that morning where you've now shouted at your child and you've spilt the milk and nobody can remember where their library books are, and you're all trying to get out the door and it's just absolute chaos. If one were able to control ourselves when the challenge is flying at us, we're not stressed about it. We look at things and we say, okay, I need to choose how I'm going to, as you said, how I'm going to respond rather than react. So instead of shouting, because that's going to take 20 minutes to fix, I'm going to say, okay, you can't find your library book. Let's think about where it was. I will be with you in 5 minutes. I'm currently packing the snacks. I think what happens is we think, oh, well, if I multitask and if I do everything at the same time, we'll manage to get out the door earlier. But actually, that is just causing even more chaos because you're trying to pack the snacks and make the breakfast and look for the library book and help the child put their shoes on. And so when we say, okay, I will do one thing at a time. I don't need to help you look for your library book right now and feed you the breakfast that you didn't want 10 minutes ago and now you do want it. I'm going to do one thing at a time because I can control myself. And when I can control myself, I can respond to you in a way that's actually going to influence you to get out the door faster than you would if I just shouted at you. So the key is learning that we are the person that we can control. We are the only person that we can control, and then we can see how we can influence others.
Whew, that was a word right there. That was a word because so many of us, we struggle. We struggle with that, and we think that, like you mentioned, the multitasking, if we do all the things at one time, it'll save time, and then we can get out the door quicker. But no, it doesn't work like that, and so I just oh, I love it. I love how you broke that down because, again, so many of us can relate to that because 'cause we're doing it every morning, but we're not able to react in a loving way, so we do have to take a step back and understand that we are the only person that we can control, so I really appreciate you sharing that. And so with that, knowing that we're the only person that we can control, how do we build the resilience needed, and what are the benefits of having that built resilience?
Well, so it was really interesting. This kind of all started clicking in for me when I went to um, a talk at my children's school. And it was by a woman who had written a book about building resilience in your children. And she was telling us all these things that you need to do to build your children's resilience. And they were all the things that I know because they're things that I have worked on with myself and I work on with clients. And I could see all of these people looking at her and nodding their heads, and then they all queued up to buy her book. I mean, the queue, and actually she ran out of books and they just had to order them. And I started asking them, what did you think of the talk? And they said, well, I had to buy the book because I loved what she was saying, but how do I do that? How do I do all the things that she was telling me that I need to do in order to build my children's resilience? And for me, this is an intergenerational thing because when we are resilient, because all the things that she was telling them to do were things that resilient people do. And when we are resilient, we can help our children to build their resilience. So things like, um, you know, the ability to say sorry, just to be able to say to our children, instead of sitting there ruminating in guilt and, oh, I'm a terrible mother, to actually go to our children and say, wow, I really messed that up this morning. I lost it. I was frustrated. One of the things is just giving ourselves and our children the permission to feel what they feel. Um, to be able to say, oh, I'm not perfect. I really made a mistake. And for them to see that that's okay. Uh, to be able to, one of the things I talked about earlier is emotional self-regulation. So, okay, we've lost it and we can go and say sorry, but how do we get to the point that we don't lose it? And that is, also like to the idea of exercising emotional choice. If we're building the mental muscles of resilience, how do I get to a point where I can exercise emotional choice? I don't just fly off the handle. I actually choose how I'm going to feel. And so all of these emotional self-regulation, the permission to feel. Um, there's a guy, Professor Mark Brackett, who talks a lot about the permission to feel. I think so many of us in our generation and our parents' generation were not given the permission to feel. And we're learning so much more. We have so much information now about how we give our children the permission to feel. But we also need to give ourselves the permission to feel so that we can then learn how to regulate those feelings. And in doing that, in learning about ourselves, curiosity kind of I like to think about when I'm wondering what's going on for me and I have an emotion that I don't know what it is almost opening up my brain and taking a big magnifying glass and looking inside what is happening and taking the time to build awareness about what's happening for myself or what's happening for the other person, so that instead of just being irritated or frustrated or angry or panicked, we can actually be compassionate, or we can be caring, or we can be curious. I mean, curiosity itself is a different emotional state to resentment. If I'm resentful of you, let me be curious about why you're behaving that way. And when we build these new ways of being, these new mental muscles, we shift out of that survival brain into a much more what we could call the sage brain, a wiser brain. It's that growth mindset brain that says, actually, this is not the only way of doing things. And when we have these resilient muscles, we have the capacity to stand in the storm. I mean, the storm can be raging around you, and you can stand in the storm and you can let it rage, and it's not about you. It's not you don't have a reaction. You're not seeing that storm as a tiger anymore. You're simply saying, there's a storm going on around me, and I can choose how I respond to that storm. I can either lose it or I can be calm. And if I am calm, if I am peaceful, if I am at ease, the storm is more likely to quieten down than if I engage with that storm and actually just cause more and more chaos to career around me. And when we're like that, we're able to focus. on our work. We can really reach our targets at work. We can, we can be creative, we can be innovative. And then we can come home, we can get everything that we need to get done so that we can come home, we can be present. We can choose how we spend our time. We're not sitting there thinking, oh, I could be doing 10,000 other things. Actually, I'm with my children, and I'm okay to be with my children right now.
That is so good. That is so good. There's so much to unpack. And it's something that I really appreciate is your candor on the emotional self-regulation and then exercising emotional choice because so many of us do not do that. And like you said, generations upon generations, we were not allowed to express how we felt. We were not allowed to express how we felt about our parents or how they, behaved towards us. It was kind of like, you're the child, you go over there. It doesn't matter what you feel, doesn't matter what you think, kind of thing. So I love that you said that. And the fact that we can do that, now we can share that with our children and then the generation after and then the generation after. And so we're much better individuals, much better human beings. But with that, I want to ask you, what is your Tabitha moment? In the book of Acts, it mentions of a young lady named Tabitha or Dorcas, and she was a servant in her community, and she just served. She served and she provided and did what was needed. But one day she became ill and died. But because of her good works, the Apostle Peter came and resurrected her, and she became well. It doesn't really mention in the Bible what she did next outside of getting up and getting back to work. But like Tabitha, I believe that we as working moms are just like her. We work and we work and we work and we serve until one day we become physically, emotionally, or spiritually sick. Was there a time in your life where you became physically, emotionally, or spiritually sick and you needed resurrection?
Yes. And I think that it was, I'll get to the moment, but one of the things that I want to kind of look at it briefly is why I got to that point. Like, why are we working so hard? Why are we serving? And yes, I think as women and as mums, we have this natural inclination. And I also think that we have this desperate longing for love and belonging. And so we serve and we serve and we serve out of this, if I do this, I will be good enough, I will be acceptable, I will be um, worthy of love and belonging, and I will fit into the world. And I think it's a work in progress. I mean, I have to work on it every day, but it's almost becoming dead to that drive to serve and becoming alive to a different motivation to serve. And I think for me that came in, and my son has been my greatest teacher when it comes to service and when it comes to my resilience, in that he is hugely sensorily sensitive. And when he was little, he used to have these 45-minute tantrums. And I had learned the importance of letting him go through these tantrums, go through the tunnel, get to the end of it. Whew, but there was so much in me that was driven to be doing all the time. I used to have 5 jobs at one point because, I was busy. And we do this thing of doing. And my son, and I think it was almost a relational illness or relational dis-ease, that was my Tabitha moment, where he was saying to me, I need you to be present. I need you to slow down. I need you to actually focus on me. And for the first time in my life, perhaps there was somebody that was more important than me, who was asking something of me. And that was when I realized that I needed to be calmer. I needed to be more at ease. I needed to be more present. I needed to slow down and serve in a different way, serve for a different reason, serve not because it made me feel like I was worthwhile, but serve because it was my role to serve other people.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. Again, I know so many of us can relate to your Tabitha moment. So many of us. And that goes just hand in hand on what you're saying about that emotional choice. You made the emotional choice to listen to the needs of your son, and that caused you to shift some thinking, to shift some action, but you listened. But that was because of your choice to sit down and listen, and not ignore, but listen and then take the action steps needed to help him. That is such a beautiful story for all of us to take nuggets from, because so many of us are living that. So many of us are living that. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that, because that is a lot of our lives. That is a lot of our lives. So thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you, Charlotte, for being here, because you have given us so much wisdom, and I am just so grateful that you are with us. You have told us that, stress is what is happening in us in response to what's happening to us externally. You've also told us that the only person that we can control is ourselves. And then you've taught us that when we build resilience, the storm can be happening outside, externally, but we can remain calm, we can remain confident, and we can remain at ease, so that we can use that emotional choice. We can have that emotional self regulation. We can feel all the feels, and we can also be successful at the same time in our career. So I just want to say so much thank you for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us today. Where can we all learn more about you and see what you're doing and just keep up with all that you have going on?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so, so much for having me. I have loved having this conversation. It's really been such a joy. Um, so I am, in terms of social media, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. My handle on Facebook and Instagram is at Charlotte Coaches. I have a community of resilient mums on Facebook. The link to that is bit.ly/managing mum community. I also do have a podcast of my own called The Managing Mum, which is you can get to at bit.ly/the Managing Mum podcast. And then I have a program, I have a coaching program, a 6-month group coaching program for working mums called Resilient, which is just a wonderful place to build a new way of being, to be resilient, to be calm, to find a way of being at ease. And that is at charlottehaggie.com/resilient.
Yes, I'm so excited about that and all that you have going on to support working moms. Again, thank you so much for being here, Charlotte. And I want to thank you all for joining us in this episode. I want you to remember that God is reminding you in this season of life that you need rest. And most importantly, you need to rest in Him. I'm going to leave you with this scripture. Psalms chapter 23, verses 2-4 from the NIV says, I should say 2-3 says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for His name's sake. May this scripture help you as you go throughout the next week and resting in Him. Join us next time as we continue this topic of breath. And don't forget to bless another working mom by sharing this episode with her so she can gain the aha moments and the empowerment to rest. Until next time, may God bless you and may you always rest in Him. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Empowering the Working Mom podcast. As you reflect on the empowering moments, remember that you are not alone in this journey. It takes a whole village to be a working mom. Discover how big your village is by joining fellow working moms in our private Empowering Working Mom online community, where we continue this conversation and support each other every step of the way. Until next time, you got this because God has you.